What's up, guys? And just like that, we're back. It's question mark picks, and I'm going to be going through the riveting Apex card that is Tybura versus Spivac 2. Now, to anybody who follows the sport, first of all, if you don't follow the sport, you have no fucking idea who these two guys are. But for anybody who does follow the sport, I think that you understand that this fight, you know, it kind of has some stakes. This is basically the fight to determine who is the heavyweight gatekeeper. UFC loves putting on these heavyweight main events in the Apex. How many times did we have Derek Lewis getting, you know, tossed around by a guy like Sergey Spivac? You know, it's their model with ESPN right now. It is what it is, but this matchup, it already happened. Again, I said that this is a rematch. A lot of people don't even know that, you know, Tybura took Spivac to a very convincing decision. That matchup was back in 2020. So, you know, it was 4 years ago. I mean, guys can grow and develop. But yeah, we're really just looking at who is the Apex gatekeeper champion, who is probably going to get the opportunity to fight a guy like Curtis Blades next. You know, I don't know. But anyway, before I get into it real quick, I want to say that, went 10-3 at the UFC Abu Dhabi Fight Night, which, look, I know that, you know, there was a lot of mixed opinions. You know, can Sandhagen get it done? Is Umar of the Nurmagomedov, you know, caliber that we all think he is? And I think that a lot of my takes were right on. And, like, even in fights that I got wrong, I'm not just trying to sit here and cope, but, like, I think that there's... I talked about this in my reaction video. Like, even in the ones where I didn't get it, we weren't super far off the mark. So I want to carry that momentum into my picks for this card. Let's see how we can do. So starting off with the first bout between Stefiani Luciano and Talita Alencar. Now, you know, when we're looking at a strawweight matchup here between, you know, two ladies who... one of them was supposed to... oh, this is a rematch. Okay, so they fought to a draw on the Contender Series. That's right. So they fight to a draw in the Contender Series, and then Alencar wins her debut versus Rayanne Amanda in a split decision, and so now they're running back... If there isn't like this is obvious evidence we can point toward that this is an absolute dog shit card, is that we're seeing a rematch of a draw on the Contender Series rather than running it back on the Contender Series, which is literally about to start this coming Tuesday. Let's run it back in a what will probably be a very forgettable Fight Night card at the Apex. You know, if I cared enough about this, I guess I would have rewatched the bout that they had. You know, off the top of my head, I believe I watched this back in September, 2023. But okay, I guess I'm just gonna pick here. I guess I'm just gonna say that I like that Alencar got to have her debut, and we did see her get a win in the UFC. And I think that, you know, Luciano, in a situation like this, guys, I guess I'm just going to default to, like, you know, physical attributes. You know, you can't, what am I going to say? It's going to be a draw again. We're looking at a 24-year-old Stephanie Luciano, Alencar, 33, arguably in her prime. Okay, so Luciano has... a massive reach advantage on her, and she's much taller. So it's been about a year since this matchup took place. I mean, and we know that Alencar, because I do remember her debut, we remember her as a grappler. I just don't remember exactly how that draw went. I'm going to say that this is going to be, can Alencar out-grapple? I'm going to say that in the UFC, based on what I've seen, that they're probably going to give it to Alencar. Even if Luciano arguably wins on damage, that Alencar will win on control time, and that's just what we're going to go off of. So, moving on to the next fight. We have Youssef Zalal versus Jarno Errens. I think this is a very obvious pick. Youssef Zalal has shown marketed improvements in his game. He went on a 3-fight win streak that saw his way out of the UFC. Since then, if we're going to factor out the kickboxing and boxing matches, he's on a 4-fight win streak. 4-fight finish streak. And he's fighting a guy in Jarno Errens. This just feels like a layup for Zalal, you know? He's fighting a guy in Jarno Errens who dropped... okay, so his UFC run so far has been dropping a run over William Gomis. That's not the worst thing, but it's like, you lost. And then losing to Sung Woo Choi, which also isn't great at all. And then he beat Steven Nguyen, but it's like... I remember watching that fight, and I remember thinking to myself that Steven Nguyen was just way overhyped coming off of the Contender Series. Hadn't done shit. So I'm not gonna... Seeing him beat Steven Nguyen, a guy coming off the Contender Series, that doesn't give me enough evidence to suggest that he's going to be able to best Zalal. I think that Zalal is probably going to win a decision because this guy seems tough, but he has been finishing people, so who knows? But I'm going to go with Zalal by decision. Alright, moving on to the next card. We got Karl Williams versus Jhonata Diniz. And, man, I'm like going back and forth on this one, you know? This is a really tricky one. This is one of those fights that they sneak into the card that you're actually very excited for. Because Jhonata Diniz, former Glory kickboxer, in his victory versus Austin Lane, it's like... It wasn't a clear stock rise, and it wasn't a clear stock fall either. And I say that because he got held down and dominated the entire first round. Now, he did keep himself safe. His defense was good. Like, he wasn't just... I mean, he got mounted. I guess we have to say that. But even in getting mounted, and I don't know if this is more so just, like, speaking to the lack of finishing ability of an Austin Lane versus a high-level fighter, but... He was able to buck Austin Lane off of mount and keep himself safe, and then he knocks him dead in the second round. So, but the thing about Karl Williams is that he leaves himself open to get hit, which is why I'm tempted. Just like Diniz has more finishing power than Justin Tafa. I feel comfortable to say that. Now, but what I'm wondering, though, is sometimes you see what a fighter like Williams does against a guy like Justin Tafa, and you say to yourself, oh, man, this guy's open to get hit, and you don't expect that he's going to learn from that, and you assume that he's going to just do that again, which, again, when you start getting into picking fights, where it gets tricky is you don't know. We don't get an IQ test next to these guys when they're doing the tail of the tape. I don't know. Is this guy egotistical enough to say, oh, so I could stand and bang with a Glory kickboxer? Or is he smart enough to say, man, I got wobbled a few times in my last fight, and I want to keep winning, and this is an opportunity to derail a hype train. There's a lot of hype on these Glory guys, so I'm going to stick to the wrestling game plan, which is what makes this so tricky. But I think that Karl Williams is... not the biggest heavyweight either, which can play into, whether or not he's going to be able to just dominate. But I don't know, man. Again, this is why this is a tough one. Like, we have evidence to suggest that he could get chinned by Diniz, and we've seen Diniz get held down. I'm just gonna go with... I think in this case, I have to go with Karl Williams here. I think that I do. I think that if I'm just like analyzing the level of the fighters here, like trust me, Justin Tafa isn't amazing, like at all. But Austin Lane was able to get some, and again, one could take my argument and say, but Chase, Jhonata Diniz is probably working on his takedown defense, but it feels like making a skill gap adjustment versus making a game plan adjustment. Like, I'm banking on a game plan adjustment versus Diniz getting way better at his takedown defense since, we last saw him in, March. So I'm going to go with Karl Williams. And if I have to do my reaction video and say that he lost this it's probably going to be because he tried to stand and bang. I'm hoping that he's a smart guy and he's not going to do that with my analysis here. Because, Jhonata Diniz, I understand that he was a kickboxer, but, I'm looking through his kickboxing record, and it's he wasn't Pereira. He wasn't a 2-division champion, he had, wins and losses, and, he's knocking these guys out, and he knocked Austin Lane out. I don't know yet that he's a guy who can just sleep a guy like Karl Williams, who, actually is somebody at heavyweight. When someone demonstrates at heavyweight an ability to wrestle very well, that alone could take them to be a top 20 heavyweight. So, I'm going to go with Karl Williams to win a decision, because I think that, if he's smart and he lays and prays, he's not going to allow for a lot of openings to Diniz to get back up, but he's also not going to have a lot of time to finish him. So, moving on, we have Karl Rosa versus Panny Kianzad. I'm going to go with Karl Rosa here. She just had a fucking, as Dana White would say, he said it wasn't a barn burner. This was a fucking barn burner versus Irene Aldana. She did lose, but she's been fighting high level fights. She's losing to the Sarah McMahons, the double cheeked up Norma Dumonts. Again, she lost that fight versus Aldana. But she's beating people who, and then you look at, Panny Kianzad, and it's the only wins that she's getting are against, opponents who aren't in the UFC anymore. I don't think that highly of. So is this my most confident pick? No, but if I'm looking at two fighters, two female, bantamweights who are coming off of some losses and really need to turn things around here, off of recent performances, I feel the most confident in Karl Rosa to do so. So I'll be going with her. Plus, she's only 29. For some reason in my head, I think that she's older than she is. She's not. So I'm going to go with her coming out of that fight. I know it was a war, but some of these WMMA fights, they're good fights, but I'm not concerned. It's not like a Justin Gaethje, Tony Ferguson type beating where I'm concerned about her coming back 8 months later. It's long enough. Next up, we have Charalampos Grigoriou versus Toshiomi Kazama. And I'm going to be going with Charalampos because Toshiomi has been knocked out in 3 of his last 4 fights. And in one of them, it was against a guy in Pound Storm, where he got flying kneed in the opening seconds of the second round. And in the UFC, his only UFC sample size is that we've seen him get slept 2 times in the first round. I can't go off of him. Grigoriou is a guy who, did we see him lose to Chad Anheliger? Yeah, and I've used that as an argument before that that's not a good look. But again, it's who are we talking about here? He's fighting in a guy who seems to be, a competent submission grappler who crumbles when he gets hit and isn't really able to take damage. I don't think that he's going to be able to take out Grigoriou in this fight, who, again, he was fighting guys like Christian Rodriguez in the regional scene. I like when I see a guy, even if he's got an 8-4 record, who's had tough fights, forged through tougher opposition than some who might have even have a prettier record. But like I said, Toshiomi Kazama has a few more wins, but when you're looking at the opponents that he's defeating, one of the opponents that he defeated was like 17-20-7. How do you have 7 draws? I don't even understand what's going on with some of these regional promotions that he's fighting in Asia. So yeah, I'm gonna keep that one simple. I'm gonna go with Grigoriou by knockout. Probably in the first round, but maybe later. Moving on to the next fight on the card, we have Yana Santos versus Chelsea Chandler. I'm gonna go with Chelsea Chandler to win a decision. I don't think very highly of Chelsea Chandler though. She, is most famous for sprinting away from double cheeked up Norma Dumont. Absolute baddie. When's she fighting next? Oh, yeah, she's on the Sphere card. Let's go. Anyway, what was I... Okay, okay. So, Chelsea Chandler. That's right. Yeah, Yana Santos. Yeah, Yana Santos is just... I don't know. She's just, I know she's only 34, but, for some... She seems older than she is. And, she's coming off 3 consecutive losses. And, you do see, dude, she's beaten the likes of Ketlin Vieira. And I understand that, but, that was 4 years ago. And I think that when these WMMA fighters kind of have their fall off, they have their fall off. And what I've seen out of Chelsea Chandler is that, if anything, she's big and she can, impose herself. And she's just going to kind of charge forward and be really loud and ha-has and throw shots. And the judges seem to like it. With her fight versus Josiane Nunes, I really didn't know how they were going to go, and they give it to Chandler. So I think that they're going to like what Chandler does more than what Santos does. So moving on to the next fight, we have Chris Gutierrez versus Quang Lee. Chris Gutierrez was supposed to be fighting Javid Basharat, who I think that he would have beat. Because I think that Javid is overrated, and that he's just Bilal Muhammad. He's like Bilal Muhammad with way less of a sense of urgency. He's like Leon Edwards. I shouldn't even hate on our current champ. He's like Leon Edwards, minus the incredible athleticism. So yeah, I think that Chris Gutierrez would have beat him. I think that Chris Gutierrez is a top guy who's only losing to ranked bantamweights, and he's fighting a debutante who might be undefeated, but he fought an LFA, so at least it's better opponents, somewhat, but they're all new opponents. There's nobody on his resume where you're whoa, that's a former UFC mainstay, or so how can I go with Quang Lee to win here? I can't. I just can't. So I'm gonna go with Gutierrez to win via leg kick stoppage, because I think that we're going to see that there's a humongous skill gap here. And when there's a humongous skill gap, Chris Gutierrez is going to destroy those legs. So anyway, moving on to the featured bout, we have Danny Barlow versus Nikolay Veretennikov. And I'm going left-handed God here. I think that Danny Barlow is pretty special. He broke his hand in the opening moments of the fight versus Josh Kinlan, and he proceeded to knock him out in the 3rd round. I think that that's super impressive. You need to understand that. If you watch the fight and you understand that Josh Kinlan isn't amazing, but it's dude, he broke his hand and he still knocked him out, and he made an adjustment. And I think that he's really, really good. And I think that he's going to crack his way into that range of the guys who are on the outskirts of the rankings. And he's going to find trouble there, I think. Don't get me wrong, I don't think he's a future champion, but, I think that a guy like Nikolay, who, again, when you're fighting guys on the regional scene, and I can't do these super deep dives on them, even if I watch the tape, I don't understand how good they are, so we need to see you, versus a guy like Left-Handed God. He has only been knocked out once, and he did have a good fight against Michael Morales in the Contender Series. I'm remembering this now. But yeah, I can't pick him to win. So maybe this is one of those fights, where you have a guy who is stepping up on short notice and makes a great account of himself, and you're looking forward to his next bout on a full camp against somebody who, he's, I guess, better suited to win. But like, I think Danny Barlow is like way ahead of where Nikolay is right now. And Nikolay hasn't had a chance to fight somebody like that. And who knows? I mean, again, you never know in these situations. But like, I know that in a situation like in last week's bout, and I'm just pulling this up right now just because for some reason the name is, escaping me. But in the bout with, no, not that one. Come on. What is going on here? Hold on one second. Trying to just find the event. There we go. Okay, it was the matchup between Jordan Vucenic, there we go, and Guram Kutataladze, where I picked Jordan, and it's like these are different. Like, Jordan was on a crazy win streak in Cage Warriors, and he beat Morgan Charriere, who like got in the UFC before him somehow. So like, and even against Guram, I was like, because that's the type where it's like, even though he's not in the UFC, I have some understanding of his ability. I don't have an understanding of Nikolay's ability. So I'm going to go with Left-Handed God. Left-Handed God has been knocking literally everybody out. So like, it's either going to be like a third round stoppage or a decision. But either way, I really like his chances of winning here. So moving on to the co-main event, we have Chepe Mariscal versus Damon Jackson. I'm kind of tempted to go Damon Jackson here, if I'm being real, because, like, Chepe Mariscal, if you look at his last 3 fights in the UFC, on paper, right? I sound like Anthony Smith. Like, on paper, man. But on paper, he beat Jack Jenkins by verbal tap out, but, like, it was a freak injury, man, Like, I don't know if that should count, man. But anyway, Trevor Peek, that was a good win, I guess, but like, we know that Peek isn't one of the best, He's just like a fun guy to watch compete against like Jordan Levitt, but he's not the type of guy who we think is going to go on a title run, or I guess I'm exaggerating, but like to be like a ranked contender even. And like the Jack Jenkins win is a big asterisk on it. And the Morgan Charriere win has a big asterisk on it. Like, are we serious? It was a split decision, but I think that a lot of people... let me look right now. Yeah, I'm going on MMA decisions, and... just because I want like the reference point. Yeah, I mean, on MMA decisions, we had 3 for Mariscal. We had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 media scores giving it to Charriere. So, like, did he win that fight? So what are we saying here? Like, we think he's going to beat, Damon Jackson because he beat Trevor Peek? That's really what we're arguing, I guess. Damon Jackson is... a guy who's pretty reliant on getting the finish to get his wins. But it's like he did just grit out a split decision win versus Alexander Hernandez that he definitely won. And I know that he lost to Billy Q, but he made a good account of himself in that fight as well. And look, I know that he also, but like he got knocked out by Dan Ige, but that's 50K Dan Ige. He's knocking out Pat Sabatini. I'm not totally sure if Chepe Mariscal could for sure beat Pat Sabatini. Like, this is a big step up in competition for Chepe. So it's like, I mean, he's durable for sure, I guess. I mean, half of his losses have come from knockouts. He got knocked out by Steve Garcia in the regional scene, but who isn't Steve Garcia knocking out these days? So, and then he got knocked out by Joe Anderson Brito too. Okay, but like those are like legit knockout losses. And then he got knocked out by Gregor Gillespie. Wow, he's fought some like really legit guys. and Bryce Mitchell. So, like, what's the lowest common denominator, though? Yes, he's fought 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 noteworthy guys in the regional scene, but it's like he lost to all of them. He also lost to Sean Soriano in the regional scene. I'm going to take a flyer here. I'm going to go with Damon Jackson. He's 36, and I get that it's a little bit sketchy taking him for that reason, but, like, Chepe, I'm just not sold. Just because you train with Justin Gaethje and you train at elevation, I'm just not. I'm going off the eye test here, not just the W's on paper. I'm going off of, what I've seen out of him, and I think that Damon Jackson is like, a guy who has constantly been floating around the outside of the rankings, and I'm just not sure Chepe Mariscal is going to be able to defeat him. So I'll go with Damon Jackson here, because sometimes I think that you got to take risks on these cards to be coming out of it with better picks. And I'm just not feeling super confident that he's like a lock pick or something. You know what I'm saying? Anyway, moving on to the main event. We have the championship of Apex heavyweights. We have the Ultimate Fighting Gatekeeper on the line here. What's different about this fight? How have these fighters changed over the years? I don't really think that they have, man. I think that we've always gotten what we get out of Marcin Tybura. You could see the last fight versus Tai Tuivasa and say to yourself, his grappling has improved. Is it that, or is Tai Tuivasa just shit at grappling? Because I think that that's what it is. Brother needs to stop doing so many shoeies and start showing up to fucking no-gi class. It's just... He's losing to the marquee guys. He had his little series where he went, 1-4 over 5 fights. And then he had a good run, including his decision victory versus Sergey Spivac. But it's like, he's what you see is what you get. Great cardio, volume. He's not really going to sleep you from one shot, but he's going to land good volume, good clinch work. Competent grappling. Like, he's really like a well-rounded guy who's got an economical winning style, but he just can't defeat like the freak Volkov size dudes, and he couldn't beat a guy like Gane, I don't believe, and he got slept by Tommy Aspinall, who's sleeping everybody with his petrol-soaked fists. And yeah, like Sergey Spivac, it's just like he's known as a finisher, but it's easy to be known as a finisher when the aforementioned finishing, again, we should have known when he was arm triangling Tai Tuivasa, like it should have been back in 2019. It should have been clear to us then. If you just grapple Tai, you're probably going to beat him. Everybody just started striking with him, and that's how he had his little run. I don't get it. It's like they're falling into the I want to have an exciting fight with him trap. If you want to make it not exciting and grapple him, you'll beat him. But like I was just saying previously, he's known as a finisher, but it's like when you're fighting Jared Vandera, Greg Hardy, Augusto Sakai, Derek Lewis, like you're going to be able to finish them. I don't think he's going to be able to finish Marcin Tybura. I think we're going to see another Marcin Tybura decision victory. I really do. Even with the extra 2 rounds. I really do. I don't see a finish here. I really don't. And I just feel like, we've already seen this fight. And if we've already seen a fight and we're going to see a different result, like a Leon Edwards, beating Kamaru, which was a, head kick at the end and he was losing the fight anyway, but that's neither here nor there. Like, that fight was so long in between where, like, so much had changed for the two of them, right? Like, Kamaru had gone on this title run, had his title run, maybe he's looking at, the end of his career, calling out Canelo, like, kind of doing the, like, end of game, I'm just trying to, get some more achievements on the Xbox type of a timeline of his career. Marcin Tybura and Sergey Spivac, they're doing the same shit today that they were when they had their fight back in 2020. Like, they're both the same guy doing the same shit in the heavyweight division. You know, like they might be slightly higher ranked, but it's like relative to the people who left and where they just slid up, they're doing the same thing. They'll like beat guys who suck, or even guys who are good but are just kind of like over the hill like Derek Lewis, but they can't beat the like top 4 or 5 elite guys. They're certainly not beating like Tom Aspinall, Cyril Gane, Volkov, Pavlovich, Jailton Almeida. Those are like the 5 guys who, like the 5 like horsemen of the, you know, heavyweight division. And I know 4 horsemen, or whatever. There's one more in this example. I guess if you do Tom as the interim and then the other 4 horsemen of the heavyweight division, like they're the dudes holding shit down, for being real. And I don't see either of these guys. These guys are like the guys who parry everyone else away from them. And I think that Tybura will win a decision where he just kind of out-hustles Sergey. And so I don't know. What do you guys want from me? This was not a lot of hype on this card, not a lot of stakes. There wasn't even a lot to glean off of the tape study that I did watch because, again, it feels like there's a lot of layups on this card, and then there's just like this main event, you know? So anyway, like and subscribe. You know, the viewer count has been upticking. Guys, I really appreciate it. Like, I know that sometimes, you know, I complain, like the cards kind of, you know, whack or whatever, but it's like, I love covering these cards, and it's cool to see that, you know, some of you guys are getting interested in what I have to say. And most importantly, I'm hopeful that we can, you know, be pretty solid here in, you know, similar percentage to last week's card. You know, finishing better than the 60% that I've been averaging. So take it easy, guys. Maybe this will be a sleeper card. I doubt it, but I will be posting my recap video on Sunday, and I'll be looking very much to covering the upcoming pay-per-view between Adesanya and Duplessis for the battle of the true African champion and, I guess, the middleweight title. So, peace.